Hi, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to start this new series, these little mini updates that are going to be focused on everything energetics, where I'm going to just dabble in a few things that I have learned along my journey that I'd like to share with you through the world of energetics as well as astrology. So, this week I wanted to talk about the energetics of the jaw and where we hold things that we have never said. This has been a really personal one for me, and I wanted to start with this one because I'm actually going through something with my jaw right now. And I have done a lot of studying on a lot of different imbalances within the physical body. But one I had never really looked into deeper was around the jaw. And of course, it's tied to the throat chakra, so it's tied to the things that we suppress. But once I started to really dig into this and go through my own journey in this experience, I thought, oh, this one's a really fascinating one that I haven't heard really anybody talk about before. So I wanted to share. So, for the last year, I have been doing a lot of work on my teeth and on my tongue and my jaw. And I'll get into teeth and the tongue in another episode later down the road. But what came through recently is that I've been working with a holistic dentist over the past year, and we started with kind of an assessment, and she started to look at everything and said, I think that you might have some sleeping problems, some breathing problems, as well as your tongue is not sitting in the right place. And I'm also seeing a lot of teeth grinding, and I'm seeing things going on with your jaw. And there was a lot of kind of TMJ type symptoms that have been coming up for a couple years for me. And the teeth grinding was something I've been experiencing since I was a child. So anyway, she had referred me over to a myofunctional therapist. And so I started working with that myofunctional therapist. And I've learned everything I could possibly learn about a tongue that I didn't know about. Working with this myofunctional therapist has been absolutely fascinating. And we kind of started working together and finally hit a wall. And she had recommended that I go have an assessment for a frenectomy, which is where you have a tongue tie and you have that tongue tie released. So I saw another dentist, a holistic dentist, for the tongue tie release. And he had done this huge scan on me and started looking at everything in detail with me and realized that the jaw was actually more important than the tongue. The tongue was actually in pretty good shape, but my jaw was not in the proper position. It had actually moved so far back, and that it wasn't really in the right position. So this, of course, started me on a deep dive from the energetic side of things and the emotional side of things. And I began to really work through, okay, why is my jaw not in place? What is my jaw holding? What are the different things about the jaw and why is it so important? And so I began to dig into this, and it's been really fascinating. So I didn't understand just how much my body had been holding until the jaw really started to get inflamed in the last couple of years. And the jaw is not just a structural component in our body. It's actually a storage unit for our body. And in my situation, the jaw was holding so much tension from years of bracing. I was constantly in a mode of assessing the situation, assessing the energy constantly. I've always been in this kind of mode of trying to understand the temperature of the energy around me. And a lot of that's because I'm such a tuned in person. So I always look at things from an energetic standpoint first before I am able to really process through that in an intellectual way or in an emotional way. And so, through this process, stress is a funny thing because we learn to really carry stress quietly in many situations. And if we have not expressed the words, expressed the emotions that we have needed to say at the time of a situation happening, we learn to swallow those emotions, swallow those words, because sometimes it feels safer to do that than to actually say them. And so for me, this jaw adjustment and this jaw misalignment wasn't a sudden thing that happened. Obviously, I started to notice symptoms over time and slowly began to understand that something was off. But these things start to quietly seep in and it becomes very cumulative over time. And so that slow tightening over time was absolutely connected to many different situations and moments where I have suppressed what I really needed to say, where I have decided not to say anything and walk away, where I have taken on way more responsibility for other people's things, not just my own, but other people's problems and emotions. And also, I stayed silent at times because I did not want things to implode. I did not want things to escalate in some situations. And when I was younger, the escalation would get really outward. And so over time, and especially through my healing journey, what I started to notice myself doing was actually retreating and swallowing and thinking that I was taking the higher road, thinking I was just going to just not be in any sort of drama, so much to the point where I have walked away in situations where I've absolutely should have said something and addressed it at the time and did not. And I really held on to that situation emotionally and obviously physically too, from that bracing. So when the jaw tightens up, it often is because the body has learned that holding something is much safer than expressing something. And so what I'm learning now is through the very real and physical process of starting to bring my jaw back into alignment, that coherence requires the release mechanism. And it's not necessarily drama-filled release, right? But it's this honest release, and it's really tapping in now to my emotional vulnerability so that I can stop clenching against my life and start really flowing with it in even more of a way. So here's all the different things that the jaw could be linked to. Holding tension and stress, of course, is number one. So we're all holding tension, we're all holding stress at different levels and different degrees. And so those things begin to show up in different parts of the body. Number two, this is about difficulty communicating how you truly feel. Third is judgment, criticism, and fear. And this can be both internalized judgment, criticism, and fear, things that you're doing to yourself, or this can be taking judgment, criticism, and fear from the external world or other people holding judgment and criticism of you. Number four, there is an inability sometimes to stand up for yourself. And the other thing is asking for what you need and for what you want. This is a big thing, especially for women. We tend not to ask for what we want because there is a societal permeation that has happened that women are just supposed to take the load and not complain or say anything. So this is something that we generally get taught, and it gets reinforced over and over and over again. And so we don't think that there's an option for us to do something differently, but there is, and we have to start doing this. Another one is around guilt, blaming, and fault finding. And then the last one is really about feeling locked in. So the jaw is getting locked into place, or it's getting locked in a certain place, or that TMJ piece, if you're hearing that clicking that happens when you have, a jaw that's not in alignment, it's, doing this locking kind of component in. And so that's all about being stuck in these patterns and not knowing how to actually break free from the patterns that you're stuck in. All of this ties back to emotions. So there's always an emotion that is tied to all of this and that you can go back to always, always, always. So if you are identifying with any of those things, obviously there's a lot of emotions in there. There's judgment, there's criticism, there's fear, there's guilt, there's blame. All of those things can be tied into what could be going on. So it's important to look at any of those components as part of the energetic block that is causing the jaw to tighten and to brace for impact. So all of this is to say that when you have a situation where the jaw is not in place, or that you're having a lot of tension and pain in the jaw, it's not just about the mechanics of all of this, because obviously there are mechanics that have to happen because you have to retrain your entire body to sit in a different position, or a position that it doesn't feel safe in sitting in. But mostly this is about relational things. It is about the emotional and the relational pieces of it. And the body is not misaligned to keep us in a punishment state. It adapts to what we ask it to do to survive in the moment. So the key in all of this is that it's not about fixing what's wrong, because healing is a process that you go down in order to identify what's actually under the surface. It's mostly about finally letting go of what we never had permission to put down. And for some of us, this started at such a very early time in our lives that we know no different. We absolutely know no difference. Our baseline sometimes is just in fight or flight mode. It is embracing for impact mode, and it's always there. That is our baseline. And so when we start to go through our own personal healing journeys and we start to identify these things later down the road that start to appear in our physical systems, the older I'm getting, the more little things that keep popping up, right? And always I am finding that it's coming back to emotions, and it's coming back to things that I forgot about or things that I suppressed because I thought that was my normal, versus understanding that it wasn't normal. And it wasn't healthy, and it wasn't in alignment for living the most coherent life that I can live. So anything and everything that we do always ties back to looking at the unconscious patterns within us, and finally coming to the conscious state of realizing that we don't have to carry this anymore, that we can put it down, and that we can change direction at any time.